It's amazing the quality of research we can do now and basically the availability of it. All right, I'm ready for questions.
That's okay.
Oh, there's everybody.
And we can do, I don't know if you guys want to turn on your cameras or not, it's not required. You can do a gallery view and do the Brady Bunch thing with us. Steve, that was really deep and incredible. And I can't wait to do some more testing. I feel like we'll do a better job this next time.
Steve, this is Tom Vaughn. It's so great to see you. It's so great to see you.
Oh, hey, Tom. Good to see you, too.
Yeah, same here, Steve. It's McD. I haven't seen you in a while,
oh my
man.
Gosh.
Yes, it's been a long time. First off, a good job on the beard, from a beard, to beard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's been a long time. And to hear you throw back to some of your days that we all were, back at the big house, which for those attending means we were all in the same design team group, various producers, interaction designers as we were. And it was in a day when usability was being discovered and defined, and we had to fight and to get our foot at the table. You were a great person to do it back then. It's great to see, and actually a little sad to see that you're fighting some of the same battles. I would have hoped we've come a little further, which, if anything, is job security for you, because that just means there's more stuff to get, more minds to convince, right?
Yeah.
Good job on the presentation.
Thank you. I mean, it's with the new recruiting tools and the testing platforms, the remote testing is making this a lot more accessible and affordable to more teams, even when you do the facilitated stuff. So I'm really happy with where the technology
that's a big point. But I think the wrapper that you've put around that, as is with any tool, is that it's how you decide to set up and use that tool that's most important. And you gave a great example of, hey, you could point at these 3 things. Can you fill out a form? Yes, I know my name. Yay, or what happens on the bigger picture of after you give me that simple stuff, excellent point.
Are there any questions? I want to make sure if there are any questions for Steve that we have some time for. No, I'm not trying to cut you off, Chris.
I had a couple. So one of them is, we've run several tests, and there is even in most usability activities, especially when you're giving some kind of incentive, which is important to make. I feel strongly that we need to give an incentive so that people don't skip the appointment, so that they take it seriously and that type of stuff. But there's a tendency to want to please the people sponsoring the test. So I wonder, can you talk just a little bit about how you make it okay and make space for people to be honest?
Yeah, so this is where there's a couple of things, like using a testing tool where the participant it's just me and the participant. First off, helps. So I will always disclose, like, hey, we have observers from the team who are watching. You don't see them, you're not going to hear from them, but they could be there. But just because as part of ethical research, you have to let people know what's happening. But so it becomes a conversation between me and that person. And then when I set it all up, in my intro, I always tell them, we're doing this with we're doing this with a bunch of people who are actually could be users, and we're trying to understand how this works for you. And so I'm really interested in your experience using this. And then I always will tell them, I didn't design anything you see today, so you can't hurt my feelings with whatever you say. And that always gets a chuckle, but it also puts them at ease up front, that like it's okay to say negative things. And then also, when we're going through it, and especially if I'm facilitating, I can sense some of the cues of discomfort or frustration, and at those points, I try to probe about what that is, and then they oftentimes just become very candid about that when they're frustrated. And I can think of many times where they start getting stuck, and I'm like, okay, well, if you were really doing this at home, what would you do at this point? And they're like, oh, I'm just going to call. And I get, 4 out of 8 people saying they're all going to call at this point. Like, that's pretty powerful when you're trying to create a self-service application and everyone's going to call to get through it because they got frustrated. But it comes down to being able to pick up those cues from the participant by watching their faces and listening to them, and then being able to probe and just sort of like get them to talk about what's going on in their mind right at that moment.
This isn't
and it also, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say also, it's and then also, you want to make them feel comfortable. So, some people they know they're failing. Like, you ask them to do something, and then they know that they know it should be there, because otherwise you wouldn't have asked them to do it, and they can't find it, and they just get frustrated and demoralized. And so when you're setting up the test, like, to have some easy things up front that they can answer with confidence, like when you're doing some background questions up front, even like usually like it's a good idea to have the first task be something that's super simple. Like, maybe it's not even related, but it's just like, hey, that's how it works, and so they can have some success. So it's not all just one failure after another. So they feel comfortable.
Yeah, I wanted to echo something you said. It's not a question, just a comment, but you said, one of the things that's really powerful about usability is watching, real people struggle with an interface. And so we've done a couple with Firecat. We just finished one up with the city of San Antonio, and we put together this 5-minute highlight video reel for the leadership to watch, because a lot of times it's very difficult to get people to watch a full 45-minute usability session, right? Or 4 or 5 of them. And so what we did was we broke it down into 5-minute highlight reel, because we've seen success with this in all of our previous stuff at usability, at USAA, at Amazon. And the 5-minute highlight reel is so powerful for leadership. They watch and they see the struggles and they see the frustration and they see, absolutely, I would call right here, like, I'm done. And not just I would call, but like frustrated, mad, angry, like, I can't figure it out, right? And that is so powerful to get leaders to sit down and watch it.
Because otherwise, you're setting it up, like Steve said earlier, you're setting it up as the designer's opinion versus the sponsor's opinion, And
so I highly recommend
an argument you want to have. What you want to have is
highly recommend
data.
recording them. Yeah, recording them and then show a highlight reel, because they will see the real user doing it, as opposed to just reading, Steve's or my report, right? It's like, okay, here's the report, but now watch this. Watch how much they struggle right here.
And the new tools make the highlight videos super easy to make. And I'll admit, that's one area where I could do some improving, is making more highlight videos, because I don't do it enough. but yeah, it's powerful to see someone, and then to hear them say something at the end of that. So
yeah, we were planning some usability interviews. User interviews is something that we have had as a Firecat First Friday discussion before, and I'm thinking that would be a good one to have another, pretty soon coming up, because that's one of those, you can do a few of those at the right time. It's not as much labor intensive or resource intensive as a full test, but you can learn a lot from that kind of stuff. And what we're struggling to do at Firecat is, especially for these agile shops that are trying to move quickly, and they're going to resist anything that slows the project down. But if we can have enough quick hit, just enough right sized usability things along the way in the iterative loops at the right time, that's the game. We've come up with a few new products toward that end. So we came up with something that we're calling a quick take usability test, which is, we'll get 2 users on camera doing 3 tasks, and we have to make the recruiting really simple, but we're going to have video, and it's not really trying to be super valid in your, you know, like I see all your methodology and we like doing that kind of stuff too, but a lot of our clients can't afford that or won't sign off on that.
Right.
So we're trying to give them a little taste of somebody else trying to use, and we love doing it when somebody's contemplating a redesign, because that we can test the existing site and see what's going on with that, so that when they're redesigning, they can solve those pain points that are already there.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
And I will say, you brought up a good point about like the methodology is when you're setting up and running studies, you have to be pragmatic about like what the team can use and what they want, because if you're trying to treat this like PhD research, it just won't go over well with probably anyone. So there's definitely some some flexibility and doing it more sort of low fidelity usability, where it's just like quick hit. But it's important to, like, the researcher needs to understand the trade-offs they're making, like consciously understand, like, this is what I'm giving up in the validity of the study to do this quickly, because you can't, because a lot of times researchers will just say, here's our usability findings, and they'll pitch it, and everyone will think, oh, well, that's valid, that is rock solid. And if you look at the methodology and you look at the participants and what they did, you're like, whoa, maybe it's not quite as good as what you say. I mean, it's helpful, but we shouldn't we shouldn't read into the findings as much.
Yeah.
So it's just being aware of it.
Right. What we're trying to solve the problem of how to get people to be believers in the methodology with some kind of taster, right? That's what we're trying for. I'll let you know how it goes.
But that's a great thing. I used to do this thing at Wells Fargo. We called them listening labs, and it was basically we would set up. We would do 3 users, 3 1-hour sessions. The whole project team was, and they would be back to back in the morning. The whole project team was required to attend all 3 sessions, otherwise we wouldn't do it. And then immediately after the last session, we would debrief it and then write up a 1 or 2 page Word document at the end. And it was designed just to get directional feedback on things. And we did a lot with marketing copy. So they'd have a bunch of different copy messages, and we just have people read the messages, and would give them a task, and they would just tell us stuff. And one thing I love about usability, and especially from a design perspective, is as you're doing the testing and listening to users, especially if you're the designer, like, you start coming up with all these really great ideas. It makes designing easy, because without it, as a designer, I sit there and I'm like, oh, well, this looks good, I like it, and it should work. But then if you hear users, it's like, oh, well, this is a much better idea, because you can put it in context what you're designing, and like, okay, I can see how that really solves a real person's problem, or how they would really go through it.
Yeah, some of my biggest forehead bruises were on the other side of the glass. Like, the button's right there.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. And so what I used to do when we did a lot of in-person testing, sometimes, because it's really quiet in the room with the participant, and I'd have the mirror behind me so people could look in, and you could hear the team like, it's right there, it's right there. You could hear them talking through the glass, because the participant is like looking at the page, and the button they're supposed to click on is right in front of their eyes, and they're totally ignoring it. Yeah. And for some great reason. And then the whole team is like, you fool, what are you doing?
Right. So does anybody else have any questions? You all went off camera on me.
Janine, it's good to see you.
Steve, good seeing you too. I'm
Thanks.
sorry, I'm not. My connection has been dicey, so I'm hiding, but it's great seeing you, and I enjoyed the presentation. Is there, well, I kind of know what you do, but I wouldn't mind if you could repeat that for everyone and how we can use your services. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but you know, when do we have to reach for a professional versus doing it ourselves? Because you know, we all can. Being sarcastic here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Then also Janine, hello. I know Janine we did a Lego series play.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
a couple
sorry.
years ago.
I've been called so many names,
okay.
so I'm responding to
a lot of what she said. So yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I wanted to join because yeah, I'm not familiar with what it is that you do outside of the LSP thing that we did. And a lot of the UI UX stuff is coming up for us as how to use the platform that we're using in school and best practices for it. And a lot of UI UX stuff is coming up. And I'm in the process of rebranding my business and having to do new websites. So I'm learning a lot. You know, I've seen as I've started to try to build stuff, I have a little bit of familiarity, and some of the things will offer the A/B testing and, you know, other forms of testing. And I'm like, oh, there's these other kinds of testing out there. Now I have a little bit more of awareness of what is involved with the UI, UX, and getting that testing done to really see does your website work as the way that you want? Does the platform work the way you want, so that people understand how to use it when you're trying to do a facilitation process? So thank you.
Great. Sure thing. So yeah, so Jenya, to your question about the like when to call me, call me all the time. So it's if you don't have someone on your team who is a researcher, that's a great time to call. Especially if you know you want to start doing usability, then it would, you know, that would be a good time. If you have a team and you have people who've been doing usability, but maybe they're the designers doing usability, that would be a good time to call, because it would, you know, one thing that I can do is come in and coach, or, you know, look at sort of what the testing is looking like and what they're doing, and give you my 2 cents on here's where I think it's working well, and here's where you can improve it. And then see, when would be another good time to call is if you're starting, like if a team is starting to see problems in other metrics, like you're getting you know, a lot of call center metrics about, oh, we're starting to see these issues, and you don't understand why they're happening. That's a good time to do usability. And I think, you know, as you know, from a product owner perspective, and this is something that I'm still working on and sort of struggling to get better at, is product owners, and who usually, you know, and the kind of clients I'm working at, they always have product groups, and they don't know when they need to get usability involved or what it is. And so trying to educate them on, like, what are the qualities of good usability and when you need it, because they'll look at usability testing and they'll just say, okay, that's usability, good, check. They did it. But they're not asking the question of, like, okay, what task did you do? What did the prototype look like? Was it an end-to-end experience? Who were the participants? Did you just randomly recruit people off of usertesting.com who were available for a 10-minute study? Or did you actually program a screener that made sure that they have they have experience with our product or experience doing things online. So in the banking world, for example, like I always look for people who do financial money stuff using their mobile phone or online. So they either have to make purchases, they have to do online banking. Even if I'm not testing, e-commerce type thing, the fact that people will, like some people who are afraid to even shop online, they're never going to use your banking app or a financial app because they're just afraid that the internet's going to steal all their private information, their personal information. So when you recruit, it's important to understand like were your participants actually, would they be willing users at some point in the future of your product? And so the product owners, going back to them, they're not thinking about those details. And it's not like you have to be a research expert, but you just have to be a little bit familiar with where the data is coming from. And I feel like with surveys, like people have a better grasp of the validity of surveys because, they'll say we had 1,000 respondents and we have our confidence interval was this. And so it's like, oh, well, that seems, pretty solid. With usability and the qualitative research, there's no it's a lot squishier, I think.
I think surveys are squishier than people think, and we're,
Yes.
we're all getting a lesson in
Oh, yeah.
and also a lesson in
right.
what they say is not what they do. And biases, right? The whole, I don't know if you guys have seen Social Dilemma, but it touches on cognitive biases. In January, I believe our Firecat First Friday is going to be Chuck Rohrig, who we worked with at USAA, some of us, talking about decision-making in the zombie apocalypse. And it's basically talking about the different types of cognitive biases and how it affects our decision-making. We were trying to have him for December, but he has a family thing. So we're still working on December. At some point, I hope to have Zhenya and Tara talk about a mobile app that they designed, a very ambitious pilot prototype of an app that they did for the city of San Antonio that gets past the limitations that, I don't know if everybody on the call still lives in a small town or a big city, but in a big city, there's a lot of data that Zhenya and Tara have uncovered about people don't know which government entity does what. And the people that work inside the city, they are organized by departments and they think, everybody knows what they do. And so Zhenya and Tara are doing that heavy lifting of trying to do culture change and reimagine in a big, ambitious way. So I'm hoping that might be coming up soon for a Firecat First Friday.
We can do it, Susan. I'm sorry, we will make a commitment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And
I just send you a note about it so we can discuss to make sure that it's a helpful, presentation for all.
Yeah,
That sounds great.
It's been very popular. They've been doing kind of a roadshow about it because there's a lot of interest in this. So I'm hoping that all of us are helping elevate UX, design thinking, usability. That's why I like staying in touch with smart people like Zhenya and Steve and Liz and all the folks that we know. We're making the online world a better place, to the extent that we can pull off these kinds of things.
And, and the one interesting thing with this whole COVID pandemic is it's shifting so many people online to do things that they never thought they could do. And like our church, we do it all online, and my wife has become a Zoom expert, and we've gotten like all the 80-year-olds dialing in every week for church, and it works. But what it's doing is it's putting a lot of pressure on designers to make things that are usable, especially when we have a lot of people who are using it who are not technologically savvy. like you can't get away with bad design if your grandmother's trying to come in and
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that's one of the positives that have really come out of this is it's put a focus on usability for the masses, for people who aren't used to being in this space and understanding how things work. And it's now being clear that that's not, you know, it's very important to understand the usability side of things.
Yep.
Hey,
Great
Michelle.
presentation. Good. I like the tools that you brought up, and more importantly, that it's not only the tool; it's really how you use it, and getting a professional like you involved that know how to put the tools to the right direction for what you need. That's key.
Thank you.
I apologize if my microphone sounds bad. Does it? I was on a Zoom call. Okay, I was on a Zoom call and they said the background noise was very scratchy.
It sounds good to us.
Oh, good. Okay, great. So understanding that every product is different, but from the viewpoint of a startup, brand new, something completely just being designed, do you offer your clients like a roadmap of, okay, this is the key points and how to test at the various levels to make it so that they're not over testing and literally going into procrastination, but not under testing to the point where the app isn't going to do what they need? Do you have kind of like, I know somebody earlier talked about paper testing and you talked about putting it on Miro and guiding them on paper. But do you kind of offer like a roadmap, like these are the key areas you should test at, and these are the levels? Hope that makes sense.
Yes. So as far as like something I could email right now, I don't have. I've put together slides that are similar to that, but yes, it's. I mean, it's pretty. There's. It would not take that long to sort of look at where you are and where you're going and what you already know about your customers, what you're trying to accomplish with the business, and then sort of to layer in, like, here's where you could integrate end user testing into your process. Because that's one thing I've had a lot of experience with all different design methodologies from waterfall and design thinking and Google sprints. I'm familiar with them enough to know how to integrate testing, and then also, based on, to be pragmatic about the type of methods and testing to propose, so you're not, breaking the bank, so to speak, to do a lot of like formal, large, expensive testing, but basically do lots of less expensive, quick, iterative stuff. And I think, especially in the startup world, that's what I would imagine is, we're looking at getting on a testing schedule of, every 2 weeks, maybe even every week. We're running 4 people and we've got sort of a standard set of tasks and a standard recruit, and just keep it going. So there's, you're always getting feedback in on the next step. And then also, testing whatever you have available at the moment. So sometimes, in the old world, it would be hard to get a test set up and running because the design team wanted to have it perfect and finished and, ready to go. And you don't need that. Like if you're moderating sessions, you can give me static screenshots and I can get you feedback, like good feedback from how participants would react and use that. If it's being moderated. So, but yes, to answer your question, it would be not that hard to sort of look at where you are and where you could do some testing. And then, even if it's a case where there's no money for testing, I could recommend some ways you could do it on your own. And
And that's another good question. When a company is starting to budget for this component in their plan, what is a good rule of thumb for how much money do you want to set aside for UX/IX testing?
Gosh, a good rule of thumb. I would say, I'm
But
trying to
it's
think.
tough.
You know,
Numbers are always tough.
Yeah.
Whenever you ask for a range in anything, it's like, well, it can be this to this, and there's always a huge spread.
I
Yeah.
have an
I would say-
anecdotal example
Yes, please.
from Craig Hopkins. You remember him? We used to work with him at USAA. He has in his mind segmented off about 10% for UX overall. For each, so for the entire project budget, he's saying he's willing to defend 10% for UX, which usability would be a part of that.
And I would answer it.
One rule of thumb.
I would answer it slightly differently. I would say any tests are better than no tests. And so whatever you can do to get some testing involved, don't worry about, is it going to cost, it doesn't have to cost more than literally $500 or $1,000 to get a quick test.
Yeah.
And so before we start worrying about like 10% of the budget or 50, whatever, testing is better than no testing, and we have to start somewhere. So we should start with testing. And then, okay, we're going to start with, to your point about a roadmap, we're going to start with 4 tests. We're going to start with one set of 8 usability tests for this one set of products, and then we're going to look at the results, and then we're going to plan the next one. Yeah. Now, we're happy to help you plan a roadmap of usability. We just did it with the city, but it's about get something going.
For somebody that was new to Texas a couple of years ago, I fully felt like what you were talking about, because in California, you go to the DMV for everything. In San Antonio, you don't. There's all these extra things, and you literally have to learn them all over again.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Steve, but testing is better than no testing. Let's start somewhere.
Yeah, and I would say, the 10% number I was thinking is like if your design budget, like 10% of that for testing, I want to say that feels like a good number. Also, like a full-time usability engineer, you can, like on a good testing cycle, and like doing like if you're doing 4:30 or a test of 5 participants, 30 to 60 minutes, you can comfortably run every other week. And so that's sort of the bandwidth. So and if you're doing like a big formal study where you're doing like 8 to 10 people, that's probably every 3 to 4 weeks for one of those. And with that said, I feel like, when I was full-time in design groups, like one usability engineer could support 3 to 5 designers probably. So the amount of work that you have 3 designers doing a lot of stuff, then they would probably have enough to be funneling to the researcher to test every 2 weeks. So I hope you could probably back in some numbers with that. If you only have one designer, it doesn't make sense to hire a full-time researcher. You would not have enough stuff. And even 2 designers, you probably wouldn't have enough stuff to test to keep someone fully engaged.
Yeah, this is at the point of designing the MVP at this point. So yeah, there wouldn't be any room for anybody full-time.
But once you have something designed, even if it's just wireframes or schematics or whatever, or a page flow, you can test any of those. You can test them on paper. You can do user interviews of the types of people that you think will become end users or stakeholders. Don't underestimate the amount of stuff you can learn just by asking people and showing them even your, earliest clunky models. Steve made that point early on, and Tom's hammering it too. Some testing is way better than no testing.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier is better than late, because that's what happened to Steve in his story time, is that he was finally able to tell them, yes, let's do a moderated test, but they had already built it. So it's super expensive to retool at that point.
Oh, and they were bought into the design and didn't want to change it.
Always.
Well, and what do you feel about, because my initial idea was to get like a base of 100 beta testers that would go along the journey and test with them continually so that they're growing with the product. Do you see that as beneficial, or do you see it more beneficial to get on these quick iteration ones where you get somebody new all the time?
Yes, that's great. I think that if you can get those people and they can come along, you've got a way to capture their feedback. Or in a panel like that is awesome if the designer's like has a quick question about, should I do it this way or that way? If that panel is available, they could just reach out real quick and get some feedback on very specific things. The one thing you start losing with a panel like that is they know the design, and so you're never going to get that new user experience, which is important. And especially if you're launching something that's new to the market, like there are going to be no users when you launch, and so you really need to make sure you have a way to capture on a regular basis that new experience of first time seeing it.
Michelle, I would also add to that in addition to knowing the design, a lot of times a beta participant group is looking at either built functionality or pretty close to built functionality, whereas a usability group mostly is looking at a prototype. Not a working functional app, a thing that is designed to look like a working functional app.
Yeah, because right now I'm on paper. In fact, I was planning on reaching out to Susan to help me with some wireframes and some idea flow, because I am literally on graph paper.
Well, let me tell you how.
Graph paper's a great place to start.
It's a great place to start. But let me answer your specific question about a roadmap. So when I was at Amazon, I led the UX and usability team for a B2B product. And I introduced usability as an ongoing thing. And I did all the testing, even though I led the UX group. So I broke Steve's rule of doing your own design testing. But
you can break the rule.
It was cheap and fast. And
it works.
And I knew how to do it because I had done it in previous jobs. So
yeah,
we laid out the roadmap of the product plan, and we looked at the major milestones. Okay, so the major, every product roadmap should have a set of major milestones, right? Release 1, release 1.1. And within those milestones, we said, okay, for release 1, this is our most important. So we're going to do 3. We're going to do a paper prototype to get super early, super fast results. We're going to do a wireframe, and then we're going to do a fully designed usability. And with those 3, we were able to give the UX designers and the engineering team enough feedback, from 3 different tests to go off and solve the hardest challenges for launch. And then we looked at the next set of major milestones. Okay, there's going to be 1.1, 1.2. Okay, 1.3 is really our big release because 1.1 and 1.2 are smaller bug fixes or whatever. But 1.3 is our new set of features. Okay, new set of features is a great time to test. So let's lay out the usability for those new set of features. Again, we don't need 3 this time because the product exists and we don't have to do as much testing. So we just need to do 1 usability session with the 1.3 version, specifically focusing on the new features and or if any one of the features drastically changed. So that gives you an idea of how we have done this in the past. So we work with folks to say, let's break down your roadmap into milestones. Let's figure out what you need to test. Let's put the plan in place. And then it doesn't have to be a big costly thing. Because I did it myself, it literally cost us the recruitment fees. That's all it cost us, right? The recruitment fees was a $100 Amazon gift card. Well, I work for Amazon, so that actually didn't cost us that much.
Amazon salaries, which are not.
I'm sorry, what?
I actually got one of those phone calls and emails asking me to participate for a $100 gift card.
So the point is that you can hire a firm who's on retainer, who's gonna cost $30,000 for every test, or you can be scrappy, or you can be in between. There's lots and lots of options for doing this. Now, I will echo Steve's point that you want someone trained in this, doing these tests, because if you just have the UX guy do it and he really has no training behind actually how usability runs and how bias works and how not to ask leading questions, then you won't get good results. So that training of a usability specialist is really, really critical. But you know, you can hire one. You can hire one to help you out with the original part of it. You can hire one for a big long roadmap. You can hire one for one test. You can hire one for this, you know, thing that Susan and I just put together, this quick take idea, like just something quick to give leadership a buy-in for the value of usability. And believe me, the 5 to 10 minute highlight video is the buy-in. It is absolutely the buy-in. So I'll stop talking though, but I just wanted to directly answer your question. Like there is a way to roadmap out the usability testing.
All right. Well, it is 41 minutes past 1, you guys.
Nice.
I don't mean to shock you. I really appreciate everybody coming. And Steve, this was an amazing topic. I would love to have you back to talk about some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Post the videos from this. I typically do Steve's presentation separate from the Q&A, which in this case is good because we had a nice long meaty Q&A. And then I can post Steve's slides as well. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your knowledge. It's incredible.
Steve, it was wonderful to see you.
It was good to see you. And it's like a blast from the past. It's like a reunion almost.
Yeah. That's what we're trying for. All right. Well, we'll see you next First Friday, if not before.